In the quiet town of Willow Creek, where the streets were lined with tall green trees and children played in the park after school, there was one house that no one paid attention to. It was a small old house at the very end of Willow Street. The paint was peeling off the walls, and the garden was overgrown with weeds. It looked abandoned, but it wasn't. Inside lived Mr. Harris, an elderly man with a white beard and deep, tired eyes. He was known in the town as the lonely old man. People whispered about him, but no one really knew him. He never spoke much. He didn't join in any town events or visit the local store. Every day, he kept to himself, walking slowly down the street with his cane, feeding the birds in his yard. His face was always serious, but he never seemed angry or sad, just quiet. Children in the neighborhood would often run past his house, laughing and shouting, but no one dared to speak to Mr. Harris. The older folks would sometimes wave to him when they saw him on his morning walks, but it was a distant wave. They didn't expect a reply. After all, he was just the lonely man. One afternoon, as the sun began to dip behind the tall trees, a young girl named Mia was walking home from school. She was about 10 years old, with bright eyes and a curious mind. Mia liked to take the long route home, through Willow Street, even though it was a little quieter than the main roads. She liked the peacefulness of it, and often found herself looking at the houses along the way. But today, her mind was distracted. Her school bag was heavy, and she had dropped one of her notebooks in the middle of the sidewalk. She bent down to pick it up, but felt a sudden gust of wind as it blew further down the street. Mia groaned, chasing after it, but the notebook fluttered out of reach. She watched as it landed on the other side of the rusty old fence in front of Mr. Harris's house. The fence was old and crooked, and Mia had never once thought about getting close to it. But now, with her notebook caught on the other side, she had no choice. Sighing, she carefully stepped through the gate, which creaked loudly, as if the house itself was warning her to stay away. As she approached the spot where her notebook had landed, she felt a shiver run down her spine. The house was so still, so silent. Not a sound could be heard, not even the chirp of a bird. It felt like the whole world had frozen. Mia reached the notebook and was about to pick it up when she heard a voice. Looking for this. Mia jumped, spinning around to see Mr. Harris standing in the doorway of the house. His face was not angry, but it was stern, his eyes sharp as he looked at her. She froze, unsure of what to say. She had seen him walk around the neighborhood, but she had never been this close to him. I lost my notebook," Mia said, her voice soft, barely above a whisper. She pointed to the book on the ground. Mr. Harris didn't smile, but he walked over to her and gently picked it up. He handed it to her without a word, his hands trembling slightly. She took it, unsure of what to say. His hand was cold, but it wasn't because of the weather. There was something else about him, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. "Thank you," she said quickly, stepping back, ready to leave. She had heard the rumors about Mr. Harris, that he was strange, that he kept to himself, that he didn't like kids. She wasn't sure if she was supposed to run or stay. "You're welcome," Mr. Harris said, his voice low and gruff. "Be careful next time. Don't lose things." Mia nodded, then turned to leave, but something made her pause. The way Mr. Harris spoke, so softly, so oddly calm, made her curious. She couldn't quite explain it, but there was a feeling deep inside her that told her there was more to Mr. Harris than just a lonely old man. She wasn't sure why, but she felt she wanted to know more. The next day after school, Mia walked past Mr. Harris's house again, just like she always did. But this time, something was different. She noticed that his yard looked even more overgrown, the grass taller than ever, the flowers left to wilt. It wasn't that it looked abandoned. It was just that he never seemed to care about it. As she walked by, she saw him sitting on his porch, staring out into the empty street, his cane resting against the side of the house. Without really thinking, Mia stopped in front of the gate and waved. She wasn't sure why she did it, but it felt right. Mr. Harris didn't respond at first. For a long moment, he just sat there, his face unreadable. But then he looked up, and for the briefest moment, he smiled, a tiny, almost invisible smile. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, but Mia saw it. "Good afternoon, Mia," he said, his voice soft but clear. "Hello, Mr. Harris," Mia replied, surprised at how easy it felt to speak to him now. "Want to sit?" he asked, motioning to the empty chair beside him. "I don't bite." Mia hesitated but then sat down. The two of them didn't speak much. They just sat there, listening to the sound of the wind moving through the trees, watching the cars go by. But Mia didn't mind the silence. It felt comforting. She didn't know it then, but that would be the start of a strange friendship. A friendship that would soon pull her into a world she never imagined. The next few days passed quickly, but Mia couldn't stop thinking about Mr. Harris. Every time she walked past his house, she felt a strange pull. She felt like there was a secret he was hiding, a story that no one knew. It wasn't just the way he looked at the world. It was the quiet strength in his voice, the calm in his actions, as if he had lived through something much bigger than anyone could imagine. One afternoon after school, Mia stopped at his house again. She didn't know why she did it. Maybe it was just curiosity, or maybe she wanted to hear one of his stories again. She knocked softly on the door. A few moments passed, and just as she was about to turn and leave, the door creaked open. Mr. Harris stood there, looking at her as if he had been expecting her. "Well, Mia," he said with a small smile. "I didn't think you'd be back so soon." I was just walking by," Mia said, feeling nervous. "I thought maybe I could. I don't know, talk. You told me stories before. I liked them." Mr. Harris raised an eyebrow, but stepped aside, letting her in. "Come on in then," he said. "It's not much, but it's better than sitting outside in the cold." The inside of the house smelled old, like dust and wood. The air was thick with silence, and the only sound was the faint ticking of a clock on the wall. The furniture was simple, mismatched. An old couch, a small table with a stack of newspapers, and shelves filled with books. It wasn't much, but Mia could feel something in the air. It was as if this house had lived through years of stories, secrets, and perhaps regrets. They sat down on the couch, and for a while, they just looked at each other. Mia didn't know what to say, but Mr. Harris spoke first. "Have you ever heard of a man named Jack Malone?" he asked, his voice quiet but steady. Mia shook her head. "No, I don't think so." Mr. Harris leaned back in his chair, his eyes staring out the window. "I knew him once, a long time ago. He was the one who brought me into the world I never wanted to be a part of. The world of spies, danger, and lies. I thought I left it behind, but some things never stay buried." Mia's heart skipped a beat. This was different from any story she had heard before. Mr. Harris was talking about something much darker, much more serious. She leaned forward, her curiosity taking over. "What happened?" she asked. Mr. Harris didn't answer right away. He just stared at the wall, lost in his thoughts. Then, slowly, he began. "I was part of an organization, a secret one. We worked in the shadows, protecting people, stopping the worst criminals in the world. But there were others, people who used the same power for evil. Jack Malone was one of them. He trained me, pushed me to become something I didn't want to be. A killer, a shadow in the night. And when I realized what I had become, I ran. I disappeared. I didn't want anything to do with that life anymore." Mia was quiet, absorbing every word. She had never imagined that Mr. Harris could have such a past. He didn't look like a spy. He looked like a man who had seen too much and wanted nothing more than to be left alone. But then, Mr. Harris continued, his voice colder now. "There are people who don't just let you disappear. They want what you know, what you've seen. They don't care about your past or how much you've suffered. All they care about is power." Mia's heart pounded in her chest. What was Mr. Harris trying to tell her? Who was he hiding from? Why was he so afraid to be seen? "It's been years since I left that life," Mr. Harris said softly. "I've tried to forget. I've tried to be just a man, living quietly. But some things catch up to you, and when they do, there's nowhere to hide." As he spoke, Mia felt a chill in the air. She couldn't help but wonder if there was more to Mr. Harris's life than just his old house and his quiet walks. The feeling of mystery lingered in the room, thick and heavy. Suddenly, there was a loud knock on the door. Mr. Harris' expression changed in an instant. He looked toward the door, his face hardening. Without saying a word, he stood up and walked toward the window. Maya followed him, curiosity and fear battling in her chest. Outside, a black car was parked in front of his house. Two men in dark suits stood near the car, watching the house. Their faces were hidden by the shadows of the evening, but there was no mistaking the danger in their presence. "Who are they?" Mia whispered, her voice trembling. Mr. Harris didn't answer at first. He just stood still, his eyes narrowing. Then, slowly, he turned to face Mia. "They're here for me," he said, his voice low but firm. "I knew this day would come." Mia felt a rush of panic. What did Mr. Harris mean? Who were these men? And why were they after him? Before Maya could ask any more questions, Mr. Harris grabbed a small black bag from the table. It was old, worn, and had clearly been used many times. He opened it and pulled out a small silver object, a gun. Mia's eyes widened in shock. "Mr. Harris, what are you going to do?" Mr. Harris looked at her with a strange, calm expression. "I'm going to do what I should have done a long time ago. Protect myself and protect you." The men outside weren't just strangers. They were dangerous. Mr. Harris knew that as soon as he saw them standing in front of his house. Their posture was stiff, their eyes cold, and their presence alone made the air in the room feel thicker. The tension grew, like a storm was about to break. "Mr. Harris, who are they?" Maya asked, her voice shaking with fear. Mr. Harris didn't immediately answer. Instead, he moved quietly through his house, his every step deliberate. He placed the gun down on the small wooden table in front of him and walked to a cupboard near the back wall. His hands moved swiftly, as though he knew exactly what he was looking for. Maida's heart was pounding in her chest. The feeling of unease she'd had ever since meeting Mr. Harris was growing stronger. What was going on? She had no idea the man she had shared cookies and stories with could be connected to something so dangerous. Then Mr. Harris pulled out a black folder. It was thick and sealed with a metal clasp, its edges worn as though it had been handled too many times. He opened the folder slowly, taking a deep breath before looking at its contents. For the first time, Maya saw a look of recognition, almost a flash of pain, cross his face. "This is what they want," he muttered under his breath. Maya stepped closer, her curiosity overwhelming her fear. "What is it?" she asked. Mr. Harris didn't answer at first. He just handed her the folder, letting her look at the pages inside. Maya's fingers trembled as she flipped through the old papers, which were filled with names, dates, and places. Hundreds of names, all crossed out except for one. At the top of the list was his name, James Harris, also known as Agent Shadow. Mia blinked, unsure what she was seeing. "What is this? Why is your name here?" Mr. Harris sighed heavily, as if the weight of the past was crushing him. "That's a hit list," he said quietly, his voice steady despite the obvious storm raging inside him. "A list of people who were once part of a covert operation, a secret organization that stopped the world's most dangerous criminals. I was one of them." Mia felt a chill crawl up her spine. She didn't understand it all, but she could see the truth in Mr. Harris's eyes. He wasn't just a lonely old man. He was a man with a past, a dark, secretive past that people were willing to kill for. "Why? Why is your name still on it?" Mia whispered. "I left that life years ago," Mr. Harris said, his voice tightening with anger. But they don't just let you go. They want control. They want the power we took from them. The people on that list. They're all targets. Anyone who could expose them. Anyone who knows their secrets. Mia could hardly believe what she was hearing. Mr. Harris had been part of a secret organization. How was that even possible? He looked like the kind of man who had never stepped foot outside Willow Creek, let alone fought dangerous criminals around the world. They won't stop coming after me, Mr. Harris continued. And they're not the only ones. The world has changed, Mia. They've all come out of hiding. The old agents, the criminals we thought were gone, they're back, and they're coming for me. Mia felt her stomach drop. Her thoughts raced. But why? Why you? Mr. Harris stood there, silent for a moment, staring at the folder in his hands. Then he finally spoke, his voice quiet but filled with a sorrow she hadn't expected. Because I was the best they ever had. And now, they want me back. The silence in the room grew heavier. Mia couldn't wrap her mind around the fact that the man who had quietly lived on Willow Street was someone who had once saved lives, stopped wars, and brought down entire criminal organizations. She felt a mixture of awe and fear. Suddenly, there was a loud bang on the front door. Mr. Harris' expression shifted instantly. The calmness in his eyes was gone, replaced by a cold determination. He looked at Mia, his eyes narrowing. "It's time," he said, his voice hard. "Stay behind me, Mia. Don't move, no matter what happens." Mia's heart raced. She wanted to protest. She wanted to ask what was going on, why he was so calm, but there was no time. Mr. Harris had already moved swiftly to the front door. Through the window, Mia saw the two men in dark suits walking toward the house, their movements methodical, deliberate. They weren't just here for an old man. They were here to finish what had started years ago. Mr. Harris didn't flinch. Instead, he went to the small shelf by the door and pulled out a small silver device. He twisted it, and a low beep echoed through the room. "I've set up a few surprises," he said, a faint grin on his face, just in case they didn't get the message the first time. Mia didn't know what to expect next. She could feel the adrenaline pumping through her body as she watched Mr. Harris prepare himself for what was about to happen. She had no idea what kind of man he had been, but she could see it now. The man who had once been Agent Shadow was still inside him. He was still capable of the same dangerous skills, the same quick reflexes. The world of shadows had never truly let him go. Mia took a step back, still in shock. She couldn't believe she was involved in something like this. But at the same time, a part of her felt strangely safe. She trusted Mr. Harris, even though she knew she didn't know the full story. As the door rattled with another bang, Mr. Harris turned to her. "They're here. This is it, Mia. Stay close." The door burst open, and two men in black suits stormed in, guns drawn. "James Harris," one of them said with a sneer. "Time to come with us." The moment the door slammed open, the room felt as though it had shrunk. The two men in dark suits moved swiftly into the house, their expressions hard and cold, their guns trained on Mr. Harris. The tension in the air was so thick, Mia felt like she could barely breathe. "James Harris," one of the men growled, his voice low and threatening. "You're coming with us. No more running." Mr. Harris didn't flinch. He stood tall, his gaze unwavering, like a man who had seen this kind of confrontation too many times. He didn't look at the men with fear. He looked at them with something else. Determination. He knew this moment was coming, and now it was finally here. "I told you before," Mr. Harris said slowly, his voice calm but firm. "I left that life. I'm not going back." The man in front of him smirked, stepping closer. "You don't have a choice. You think you can just walk away. You think they'll let you live in peace after all you've done. You're still on their list, Harris, and they always get what they want." Mia's heart was racing, but she didn't dare move. She was frozen in place, unsure of what would happen next. The weight of the moment felt unbearable. She wanted to scream, to run, but something inside her told her to stay quiet. Mr. Harris was in control. He had been in situations like this before. He knew what to do. The second man, standing in the back, shifted his stance, his eyes scanning the room. No more talking. You're coming with us, old man. You've outlived your usefulness. That's when Maya saw it, the faintest glint of something in Mr. Harris's eyes. It was barely noticeable, but it was there. The old man was ready. In a single, smooth motion, Mr. Harris reached into the pocket of his jacket, pulling out the small black device Mia had seen earlier. Without warning, he pressed it, and a loud click echoed through the room. Before anyone could react, the sound of heavy footsteps filled the house. Mia's eyes widened as she saw what was happening. The surprises Mr. Harris had set up were activating. The men didn't have time to react. Suddenly, the front door slammed shut behind them, locking them in. The lights flickered, and the air became charged with tension. From the kitchen, a hissing sound started, followed by a loud thump. The men looked toward the sound just in time to see the first trap spring to life. A thick cloud of smoke filled the room, and the two men stumbled back, disoriented, coughing. They couldn't see anything in the blinding haze. Maya stood there, stunned, as Mr. Harris moved with the precision of someone who had done this 1,000 times. He didn't run. He didn't panic. Instead, he stepped forward, his face a mask of concentration. The first man, struggling to get his bearings, raised his gun, but before he could aim it, Mr. Harris was on him. With a lightning-fast move, he grabbed the man's wrist and twisted it, causing the gun to fall from his hand. The man yelped in pain, but Mr. Harris didn't stop there. He moved behind the man, using his own body as leverage, and within seconds, the man was on the floor, immobilized. The second man tried to make a move, but he was just as lost in the smoke as the first. His hand groped around for his gun, but Mr. Harris had anticipated this. With a swift, practiced motion, Mr. Harris reached out and grabbed the man by the collar, pulling him forward. The man didn't even have time to react before Mr. Harris kicked the gun out of his hand and slammed him against the wall. Mia watched, wide-eyed, as Mr. Harris easily subdued the two men. She had never seen anything like it. The quiet, unassuming old man was a force to be reckoned with. Every movement he made was deliberate, precise, and expertly executed. Within moments, the two men were on the floor, both disarmed and incapacitated. The smoke began to clear, and the room fell silent except for the heavy breathing of the defeated men. Mr. Harris stepped back, his expression unchanged. "I warned you," he said quietly, his voice filled with an edge of finality. "You should have stayed away." Mia couldn't believe what she had just witnessed. The entire room was still, the tension hanging in the air. The men on the floor groaned, their faces twisted in pain. But they were alive, for now. The silence was broken by the sound of sirens in the distance. The authorities were on their way. "Mr. Harris," Maya said, her voice trembling but filled with awe. "What do we do now?" Mr. Harris glanced at her, his eyes softening for the first time. "Now we finish this," he said, his voice calm but determined. "This isn't over yet. They'll be back." Mia nodded, still in shock, but feeling a strange sense of calm wash over her. She knew that Mr. Harris had a plan, and that somehow they would make it through this together. But just as she was about to speak again, her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen, her blood running cold. It was a message from an unknown number. The text read, "You're in danger. Get out now. They know you're involved." Mia froze. Who could have sent this? And how did they know about her? Mr. Harris looked at her, his eyes narrowing as he saw the fear on her face. "We need to go. Now." Mia's mind was racing. The message on her phone wasn't just a warning. It was a threat. She could feel the weight of it sinking deep into her stomach, tightening like a knot. Who would send a message like that? And how did they know she was involved with Mr. Harris? Mr. Harris's gaze never left her face. He could see the confusion and fear in her eyes. Without saying a word, he moved quickly to the window, peering out through the blinds. His sharp eyes scanned the streets. The sirens were getting closer, and Mia knew it was only a matter of time before the police would arrive. "We need to move. Now," Mr. Harris said, his voice commanding. He turned to face her, his expression serious. "The people after me. They won't stop until I'm dead, and they won't hesitate to hurt anyone who gets in their way." Mia felt a chill run down her spine. The man she had thought of as just a quiet neighbor, someone who'd shared stories and cookies, was now a man on the run, hunted by people who wanted him gone. But I don't understand," Mia stammered. "You've been here for years. Why now? Why are they coming after you?" Mr. Harris hesitated for a moment, his eyes flicking to the two men lying unconscious on the floor. His fingers brushed over the edge of the black folder that had started all of this, the hit list. He didn't answer immediately, as if weighing how much to reveal. Finally, he spoke. "The organization I used to work for," he began, his voice low and deliberate. "They never let go of their assets. I was one of their best agents. But I walked away. I thought I could live a quiet life, stay out of their reach. But when you've done the things I've done, when you know what I know, they'll always find you." Mia listened intently, the pieces of the puzzle slowly falling into place. Mr. Harris was no ordinary man. He wasn't just an old, lonely neighbor. He was a former agent, someone who had played a key role in stopping dangerous people. And now they were coming for him. The gravity of the situation settled on Mia like a heavy weight. "But you said they were coming for you, not me," she said, her voice trembling. "Why did you send me the message?" Mr. Harris was silent for a moment. He didn't turn around, but Mia could see the tension in his shoulders. He was grappling with the decision in his mind, torn between telling her the whole truth and protecting her from the dangers of the world he had left behind. "The people who sent that message," he started, then paused. "They're not the same as the ones who want me. They're much more dangerous. They're part of a network, an underground organization with connections everywhere. They've been watching us. Mia. Watching you." Mia's heart skipped a beat. Watching her. She had no idea. She had only known Mr. Harris as the kindly man who lived down the street, the one who always had a story to tell. Now, the truth was coming out, and it was worse than she could have imagined. Before she could ask any more questions, Mr. Harris grabbed her by the arm, pulling her toward the back door. "We don't have time for questions," he said urgently. "We need to leave. Now." Mia barely had time to process his words as he led her through the small hallway of his home. Her thoughts were in chaos. But one thing was clear: her quiet, ordinary life was gone. In its place was a dangerous game of survival. The stakes were high, and she was right in the middle of it. As they stepped out the back door, Mr. Harris moved with the precision of someone who had spent years in dangerous situations. His eyes were constantly scanning their surroundings, his steps quick but silent. Mia had never seen him like this before, so alert, so focused. She could feel the difference. They moved quickly through the alley behind the house, their footsteps muffled by the dense fog that had rolled in. The streets were eerily quiet, but Mia couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end as she walked beside Mr. Harris, her mind spinning with questions. As they neared the edge of town, Mr. Harris stopped. He held up a hand, signaling for Mia to stay still. "I need to make sure the path is clear," he whispered. Mia nodded, watching him with wide eyes. She had no idea where they were going or what would happen next, but she knew one thing for certain. She was in this now. There was no turning back. She was no longer just a witness. She was involved. Moments later, Mr. Harris turned back to her, his face grim. "The car's up ahead," he said. "We'll get out of here, but we need to be careful. This is just the beginning, Mia. The people who are coming, they don't stop." They moved forward, the air thick with uncertainty. Maya's thoughts were a whirlwind, but one question kept repeating in her mind. Who was really behind all of this? They'd reached the car, and Mr. Harris quickly started the engine. As they pulled away from the house, Mia glanced back one last time at Willow Creek. It looked just like it always had, quiet, peaceful. But she knew it was anything but. Her phone buzzed again, and Mia glanced down. Another message. You think you can run. We always find you. Mia's heart dropped. The game had begun, and she had no idea who would win. Mia's heart pounded in her chest as they sped down the narrow roads of Willow Creek. The once familiar surroundings were now a blur of trees and houses, as if the town itself was fading into the background. The engine of Mr. Harris's old car roared as they pushed the vehicle to its limits, racing away from the only life Maya had ever known. The message she had received weighed heavily on her mind, but she couldn't bring herself to look at it again. She was afraid of what it might say next. Instead, she focused on the dark road ahead, her hands gripping the seat, her breath shallow. Mr. Harris's eyes were fixed on the road, but there was an intensity in his face that Mia had never seen before. He was focused on something beyond just driving. It was as though every second counted. You're going to be okay, Mr. Harris said quietly, his voice steady, but with a hint of reassurance. Mia glanced over at him, not sure if she believed it. How could she be okay when everything she knew had just been ripped away? Her life, her peaceful existence. Nothing felt certain anymore. She wasn't even sure who she could trust anymore. Who are they, Mr. Harris? Who's chasing us? Maya asked, her voice trembling despite her efforts to stay calm. Mr. Harris hesitated, his jaw tightening. They're part of an organization that no one should mess with. He'll find their reach everywhere, but he won't know they're there. The people we're dealing with, they control everything. Politics, business, criminal organizations, they pull the strings from the shadows. And now that you're with me, you've become part of their game, Mia. The gravity of his words sunk deep into her bones. An organization that powerful. How had he gotten involved with them? She wanted to ask more questions, but her fear stopped her from speaking. She knew it wasn't the right time. Just as she thought the silence was becoming unbearable, a sharp crackling sound came from the dashboard. The radio flickered to life, and a distorted voice came through. James Harris, the voice hissed, distorted but recognizable. You think you can run. You think you can hide. We'll find you, and we'll take everything from you. Everyone you care about will pay. We always finish what we start. Mia's blood ran cold. She froze, staring at the radio, her throat tightening. They knew where they were. Mr. Harris's grip tightened on the steering wheel, his knuckles turning white. He didn't say anything, but Mia could see the hard line of his jaw, the clench of his teeth. It was like a switch had flipped inside him. He was no longer the man she had known. He was someone different now, someone with a mission. Stay low, Mia. Don't make a sound, he instructed, his voice like ice. Before Maya could react, the sound of sirens cut through the air, distant at first, but growing louder by the second. They were closing in. I thought you said we were out of range, Mia whispered urgently, her eyes scanning the rearview mirror. We are, Mr. Harris replied, his voice unwavering. But we've been compromised. We need to find a place to lie low. Fast. Mia's heart rate spiked as she turned to look behind them. The flashing lights were unmistakable. A patrol car. She hadn't even realized they had crossed into another county, but the sirens now confirmed it. They were being followed. Hold on, Mr. Harris said, slamming his foot down on the gas pedal. The car surged forward, the tires screeching against the wet road. Maya was pressed back against her seat as the car shot down the winding road, cutting through the night like a bullet. In the rearview mirror, Mia could see the patrol car gaining on them. It wasn't just one car now. There were two, maybe three, headlights flashing like a relentless storm in their wake. Mr. Harris. They're catching up. Mia gasped. I know, he muttered through gritted teeth. Just trust me. They veered off the main road, turning sharply onto a narrow path that Mia had never noticed before. The forest around them was thick, and the road grew rougher, more uneven, as though no one had driven here in years. The police cars followed without hesitation, their lights bouncing erratically in the darkness. The chase had begun in full force. The old car rattled as it bounced along the path, the engine struggling to maintain speed on the rough terrain. Maya looked behind them again, her breath catching in her throat. The headlights of the police cars were now so close, they seemed to be right on their tail. Mr. Harris's eyes were hard as steel, his expression grim. His hands moved with quick precision, steering the car through the winding path, his foot never lifting from the gas pedal. We're not losing them, are we? Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. We're not, he said flatly, his eyes scanning the path ahead. But we can't stop either. The headlights from the police cars flashed like ghostly figures, their engines roaring behind them. Mia could hear their tires skidding as they struggled to keep up with Mr. Harris's car. But then, without warning, Mr. Harris took a sharp turn to the right, veering off the path and into a deeper part of the forest. The car jolted as it hit a rough patch of earth, and Mia's heart leaped into her throat. What are you doing? She screamed, holding onto the edge of her seat. Trust me. Mr. Harris snapped back, his voice tight. They were now completely off-road, plunging through dense trees and thick underbrush. Mia could hear branches scraping against the sides of the car, but Mr. Harris was pushing the vehicle forward with determination. The police cars had lost sight of them. The flashing lights and sirens were no longer in range. For the first time since the chase started, Mia felt a flicker of hope. Are we safe? Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Harris didn't answer immediately. He pulled the car to a stop, breathing heavily. He stared ahead, the glow of his dashboard lights illuminating his face. Not yet, he said quietly. We've bought ourselves some time, but this is far from over. Mia felt a cold shiver run down her spine as she looked at him, his face as hard and unreadable as stone. They were far from safe. The real battle had just begun. The forest around them seemed to close in as Mr. Harris slowed the car, turning sharply into a narrow dirt trail that barely seemed passable. The headlights flickered as they drove deeper into the woods, the surrounding trees pressing in on them like silent witnesses to their escape. Mia's heart was still pounding in her chest, her hands cold and trembling. But she knew they couldn't stop. Not yet. Not until they were far, far away from the danger chasing them. How long until we're safe? Mia finally managed to ask, her voice strained and quiet, breaking the heavy silence. Safe, Mr. Harris repeated, glancing at her briefly. His face was set in lines of grim determination, but there was something else there. Something darker, something that hinted at the weight of a long-buried past. I don't know what safe looks like anymore, Mia. Mia swallowed hard, her mind still reeling. What did he mean by that? What had he been through that made him sound so certain that safety was no longer an option? He pulled the car into a clearing and killed the engine. The only sound now was the faint rustling of the wind through the leaves, the chirping of distant insects. The forest was silent, peaceful even, but the tension between them was palpable. Mia could feel it, deep in her bones. This wasn't the end of the chase. It was only the beginning. Come on, Mr. Harris said abruptly, his voice low and tense. He opened the door and stepped out of the car, his eyes scanning the area. We're not staying here long. Mia hesitated for a moment, but she followed him. They both moved quickly, the soft crunch of leaves beneath their feet muffled by the surrounding trees. They made their way toward a small cabin Mia hadn't noticed before. It was tucked away between the trees, almost as if it had been waiting for them. Mr. Harris glanced back at her, his expression still unreadable. This is a safe house, he explained. It's been in my family for years, but it's not a place to stay for long. Mia nodded, trying to process everything that had happened. From the moment she had received that strange message on her phone to now, being led through the woods by a man she barely knew, who turned out to be far more than he appeared, it felt like her life had been ripped apart in a matter of hours. They entered the cabin, and Mr. Harris immediately moved toward a small desk in the corner. He rummaged through some papers, pulling out a few files, and set them down in front of him. "Sit down, Mia," he said, his voice colder now. "You need to understand what's going on. You're in this now, and you need to know the truth." Mia did as he asked, her mind still spinning. She had so many questions, but at the same time, she was afraid of the answers. What kind of truth was he talking about? Mr. Harris sat down across from her, his eyes locking onto hers with a steely intensity. "This isn't just about me. It's about something much bigger. The organization I left behind. They don't just want me. They want everyone who's ever known me. That includes you." Mia felt a chill spread through her. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. She had so many thoughts racing through her mind, but the weight of the situation was starting to settle over her. She was in deeper than she ever could have imagined. "You're not just a random person caught up in this," Mr. Harris continued, his voice dropping lower, almost like a whisper. "You've been part of something bigger than you know. They've been watching you for a long time, Mia." Mia's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean, watching me?" Mr. Harris reached into the drawer and pulled out a small leather-bound notebook. He opened it, revealing pages of notes, names, and blacked-out lines. It looked like something out of a spy novel, but this was real. Too real. "These are the people who are after me. But what you don't know is that you've been part of their plans for years." His eyes met hers, and for the first time, there was a hint of vulnerability in his gaze. "They used you, Mia. They've been manipulating your life, pulling strings without you even knowing it." Mia stared at him, struggling to process his words. Manipulating her life. How? Why? "But why me?" she asked, her voice trembling now. "I don't even know who these people are." Mr. Harris stood up and began pacing, his mind clearly racing. "Because you're connected to something far more dangerous than you can imagine. You were always supposed to be part of a much bigger plan, a plan I was meant to stop, but they always found a way to stay one step ahead." Mia could feel the weight of his words pressing on her, the world she knew cracking and splintering as she learned just how deep the conspiracy ran. It felt like she was in the middle of a dark web she couldn't escape from, a web that was growing tighter by the second. "Who are they?" Mia demanded, her voice shaking with a mix of anger and fear. "And what do they want with me?" Mr. Harris stopped pacing and looked at her, his eyes filled with a deep, painful regret. "They're not just a criminal organization. They're everywhere. They're in power, in positions of influence. And they want control. They want to reshape the world according to their will. Mia. And you're part of that plan. You always have been. You just didn't know it." The revelation hit her like a punch to the gut. She felt dizzy, like the floor had dropped out from under her. How had she ended up in the middle of something this terrifying? What was her role in all of this? "I'll explain more, but for now, we have to move," Mr. Harris said, cutting through her thoughts. "They'll be looking for us here soon. We don't have much time." Mia nodded numbly, still trying to process everything he had told her. Her world was spinning, and nothing felt real anymore. All she wanted was to go back to the way things were, but she knew deep down that would never happen. As they prepared to leave, Mr. Harris's final words echoed in Mia's mind. "They've been watching you, and now they're coming for you. And for me." She knew this was just the beginning of the fight for her life. The cabin was silent, save for the occasional rustle of leaves outside. The storm that had been brewing for hours had finally arrived, and the wind howled through the trees like a warning. Mia could feel the weight of the storm both outside and inside her chest. The world had become a strange, twisted version of reality, and every step she took seemed to pull her deeper into a nightmare she couldn't escape from. Mr. Harris, ever the enigma, had spent the last hour preparing. He packed a small duffel bag with essentials, guns, ammo, maps, and files that Maya still didn't fully understand. She had asked him about it, but his answers were always vague, pushing her to focus on the now, to survive this moment, not to look too far ahead. But the fear that gnawed at her gut told her that survival wasn't just about getting through tonight. It was about figuring out who she was in all this, and who was hunting them. "They'll come for us tonight," Mr. Harris said, his voice dark and steady as he checked his watch. "And when they do, we have to be ready." Mia had never seen him like this before. He was no longer the quiet, kind man she had known, the one who had taught her to ride a bike and made her laugh. He had transformed into someone she barely recognized, a man on a mission, a man who knew that every decision he made now could be the last. But what had happened? What was the real story behind Mr. Harris? Mia wasn't sure if she could trust him completely, but the alternative was far worse. She was stuck in this storm, whether she liked it or not. A loud crash echoed from the forest outside, followed by the unmistakable sound of boots crunching against the dirt. Mr. Harris's eyes widened, his face going pale with realization. "They're here," he whispered, his voice low and tense. Maya felt a rush of panic in her chest, but she fought to keep her breathing steady. She wasn't ready for a confrontation, not like this. She wanted to run, to escape, but there was no escape anymore. "Mr. Harris," she began, her voice trembling. "What is this all really about? Why are they after us? After me?" He didn't answer right away, but his eyes softened. For a fleeting moment, Maya saw the vulnerability he had been hiding from her all this time. But then it was gone, replaced by the hard edge of a man who had long since stopped running from his past. "You need to know who you are, Mia, who you've always been," he said, his voice steady but filled with regret. "They want you because you're connected to something powerful, something that can't be undone." The cabin door suddenly flew open with a violent force, slamming against the wall. Mia gasped and turned to see 3 men standing in the doorway, dressed in dark tactical gear. Their eyes were cold, their faces emotionless. They were armed and ready. "James Harris," one of them said, his voice chillingly calm. "You've been running for too long. It's over." Mia's heart skipped a beat. This was it. This was the moment she had been dreading, the confrontation that would decide everything. "You don't understand," Mr. Harris said, stepping in front of Mia. "It's not just about me. It's about stopping all of you." The men didn't flinch. They were prepared for this fight. They had been waiting for it. "Move aside, old man," the leader ordered, his hand tightening on the gun at his side. "We're not here for you. We're here for her." Mia's breath caught in her throat. It was her they were after. It was always her. "Why?" Maya shouted, her voice breaking with fear. "Why me? I don't even know who you are." The man sneered, his expression growing cold. "You're the key to everything. You always have been. The moment your mother gave birth to you, it was all set in motion. You've been the pawn in a game you don't even understand." Mia felt her knees go weak, but Mr. Harris stood firm, blocking her from their view. "No," he said firmly, his voice hard. "This ends tonight." Without warning, Mr. Harris moved with lightning speed. His gun was out and aimed at the men in a second. The lead attacker barely had time to react before Mr. Harris fired, the shot echoing through the night air. One of the men crumpled to the ground, but the others were quick to retaliate. The cabin erupted into chaos as gunfire rang out. Maya ducked behind the small table, her heart pounding as she watched the scene unfold. Her body shook with fear, but she couldn't look away. This was happening. The fight had come to her doorstep. Mr. Harris was a blur of motion. He ducked, fired, and moved with a practiced precision that left Mia in awe. This was the man he had been hiding from her all this time. The man who had been part of something far darker than she could have imagined. But just as the second attacker lunged at him, Mia saw her chance. In a moment of clarity, she grabbed the gun from the table, holding it unsteadily in her hands. Her eyes locked onto the final man, the one who had been speaking to them. He was aiming at Mr. Harris. "Don't," she shouted, her voice cracking with fear and anger. The man turned toward her, his eyes widening in surprise. It was just enough of a distraction for Mr. Harris to land a final blow, knocking the man out cold. Everything went silent. The only sounds left were the heavy breaths of the two survivors, Mia and Mr. Harris. Maya looked down at the gun in her hands, still trembling, realizing that for the first time in her life, she had just taken control of her own fate. "We're not done," Mr. Harris said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "There's still more to come." As the storm raged outside, Mia knew the battle wasn't over. But something had shifted. She was no longer the girl she had been. And with Mr. Harris by her side, she wasn't going to let the past dictate her future anymore. Together, they would face whatever came next.